So we are officially less than 48 hours away from seeing Avengers Endgame. And I thought in preparation for that, I would do a video where I was originally going to do my top 10 favorite MCU movies, but then I decided, you know, I like way too many MCU movies. I kind of want to just rank all of them. And I've seen that several people on YouTube have ranked all of them. So yeah, I'm just going to jump on the bandwagon and talk about every single one of them. Now, I don't want this video to linger on too much because there are 21 movies that I need to talk about, and so I'm just going to kind of like rush through them as fast as I can while giving credit where credit's due. And due to the fact that there are 21 movies, I went ahead and separated them into 4 different categories, not equal. There's the movies that I don't like, the movies that I somewhat like, movies that I really like, and then the movies that I love. So right off the bat, I'm going to give you number 21 and 20 are the 2 movies in the MCU that I just do not like. That is Ant-Man and the Wasp and Iron Man 2. I liked Iron Man 2 when it came out, but the movie just hasn't aged well, and Ant-Man and the Wasp was so boring when I saw it I have never had a desire to go back and rewatch it. These are by far my 2 least favorite experiences that I've had in the entire MCU, and the only 2 movies that I actually do not like and will always skip over when rewatching these movies. Now, moving on to the rest of the list, I'm going to go ahead and go to the movies that I somewhat like. Starting at number 19, which is Thor: The Dark World. Again, this movie is pretty mediocre, but like, the characters of Thor and Loki interacting and stuff, you know, it makes it enjoyable to watch. And the final battle, I think, is pretty underrated when they're like going through the portals to the different planets. I thought that was really cool. I like that. But then, you know, the evil villain Malekith is such a boring, forgettable villain that I just can't see myself putting Thor: The Dark World any higher up on this list because it just really is kind of a dull experience, and I don't find myself rewatching it a whole lot. Coming in at number 18 is the most recent Marvel movie, if you don't count Endgame, that's Captain Marvel. Again, this movie's not bad. It's just going to be kind of forgettable down the line, you can tell. Mainly because of Brie Larson. She's just not that great of an actress in my opinion. Now I get it, she's won an Oscar, but I never saw the movie she won an Oscar for, so I don't know how she was in that. But I know how she was in Captain Marvel, and she was very mediocre. Probably the most mediocre casting of a superhero we've had so far. Coming in at number 17 is The Incredible Hulk. This is possibly the most forgotten about movie in the entire MCU because there's no Mark Ruffalo. It's Edward Norton that played the Hulk in this movie. And this movie did come out like a month after the first Iron Man, so it is way back in our memories. Like, this movie's like 11 years old now. But to me, I don't think Edward Norton was a bad Hulk. I don't like the things he tried to do on set, and that final battle between Hulk and Abomination was incredible. No pun intended. However, that final battle is not always worth the 60 to 70 minutes you gotta watch leading up to it, so I'm gonna leave the Hulk kinda down on this list. Coming in at number 16 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now this one kinda did leave a bad taste in my mouth when I first saw it because I feel like it took all the action that the first movie had and kinda pushed it all to the very beginning and the very end of the movie, and the whole middle section was just a whole bunch of daddy issues and gold people that I didn't care about. And then finally at the end it did have a really great big reveal, and I love what they did with Ego. But yeah, other than that, this movie is kind of forgettable in comparison to the first one. There's like a little bit of way too much humor, but the characters, you still love them, and it still makes the movie fun to watch. Number 15 is Thor, the first movie. I loved this movie when it came out. It's a lot of fun, and Loki is an amazing villain. He has been since the very beginning. He's only gotten better, but in this movie I remember thinking he was like the most awesome villain we had so far in the MCU. Being that I've seen the movie probably like 10 times now, I will say it hasn't exactly aged very well. There's a little too many Dutch angles, and upon rewatch it doesn't always hold up as much as other movies in the MCU have. But still, great film, great visuals, awesome characters. And moving on up, number 14 is Captain America: The First Avenger, another one of the Phase 1 movies. This one, when I first saw it, I thought it was okay, and as I watched it, I kind of liked it more and more and more. I love the character Bucky. I love the character Captain America. This is a really good intro to his character. It's kind of like it doesn't hold up as well as these new movies have just because of its kind of lack of action and that whole segment in the middle of the movie where they make him an actor. It doesn't hold up as well. And they kind of montage through the most exciting scenes of the film. And I don't know why they did that. But still, it was a great intro to this character, and I love what they've done with him since then. Alright, so that was the group of movies that I somewhat like. Now we're going to move into the movies that I really, really like. Starting with Doctor Strange. Perhaps the trippiest movie in the MCU. And even though he's only been in like 2.5 movies at this point, if you count his little cameo in Thor Ragnarok, but Benedict Cumberbatch is iconic as Doctor Strange. He's the perfect cast member, and I hope they don't recast him. I don't think they will. He's great. The villain kind of sucks in this movie, but, you know, that's to be expected in an origin story. Honestly, one of my least favorite villains within the whole MCU. That's why it's kind of lower on this list, but I still love this movie. I think it's great. Alright, coming in at number 12 is my pick for the most underrated film in the entire MCU. That's Iron Man 3. Usually when I hear people talk about Iron Man 3, it's filled with nothing but hate because mainly of what they do with the Mandarin, but I didn't grow up reading Iron Man comics or watching any Iron Man cartoons or anything, so I was never a huge fan of his. I just saw his movie and really liked it, you know? And when Iron Man 3 came around, I thought it was like so much better than the second one. It was almost on par with the first one, actually. I had a really great time with it. It humanized Tony Stark, and it, was a lot funnier than the previous two and just really enjoyable. So like Iron Man 3 being the most underrated film in the MCU, number 11 in my opinion is the most overrated film in the MCU. Black Panther. Now, I say it's overrated, doesn't mean I don't like this movie. I really like Black Panther. I think it's great, and it's got like one of my favorite villains, like in the top 5. Killmonger, he's wonderful, but everything about Black Panther is awesome. The whole cast is perfect. I just think that the movie gets a little bit too much hype. I don't think it should have won all those Oscars, but that's just me. It's a little bit overrated. It's not the best movie in the MCU, but I think it's a great entry. Really rewatchable. A lot of fun. Alright, now we've officially reached the top 10. Pulling its way into number 10 is The Avengers Age of Ultron. Like Iron Man 3, this one is super underrated, I feel like. A lot of people give this movie more hate than it deserves. The action itself is on par with the first one, if not better. Maybe not better, but like, there's more of it. This movie is exciting from beginning to end. Now it can get a little bit clunky here and there, and they throw in some scenes that just foreshadow future movies, and this is probably the most confusing movie within the entire MCU just because they've got a lot of stuff they're trying to shove into it, but it's still a lot of fun. If you just turn your brain off and don't try to focus too hard on the storylines that they're shoving into it and just have fun with the action, this is one of the best installments within the entire MCU, in my opinion. Number 9 is a movie that when I first saw the movie in theaters, I was like, yeah, I like it, it's fun. But the more and more I watch it, the more and more I just really actually love this. That's Thor Ragnarok. This movie is hilarious. Like, it is just so funny. And at first I thought maybe it's got a bit too much humor, and it probably does at points. The humor kind of takes away from the dramatic things that are happening in the film, one scene in particular towards the end. But this movie overall took Thor in a totally new direction that he needed to go. The first two movies probably took Thor a bit too seriously, but this one, it just allowed all the cast members just to have fun with the movie. A lot of it was probably improvised, and it worked. It's got a really cool villain, and I hope they let Taika Waititi direct more movies within the MCU, because this movie was just a great time. It was a nice breath of fresh air, something that we aren't really used to. Alright, now we're in the God tier of my list. These top 8 are the movies that I love in the MCU, and starting off that list, in number 8 is perhaps the smallest movie within the entire MCU with a really big payoff. That's Ant-Man. Again, villain, mediocre, but that's okay. He's a little bit more tolerable in this one than previous entries, because this movie really does focus on the origin of Ant-Man. You don't need a villain overshadowing the hero. I get that. You save that for the sequel, which I think they totally ruined, but we're talking about the first movie right now. This movie was so much fun. I remember seeing it in theaters and just having a blast with it. I think Paul Rudd is the perfect cast choice for Ant-Man, and I'm really excited to see him finally actually get to team up with the Avengers in Endgame. That's going to be so great. I'm really pumped to see that. Coming in at number 7 is the movie that just started everything. That was Iron Man. This movie is really what started it all. It was such a small movie, and when I first saw it, I was just a child, and I had no idea that it was going to grow into this franchise that just changed everything. Jon Favreau did a wonderful job directing it. They casted the perfect Iron Man, as Robert Downey Jr. has held on to his throne for 11 years, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for what's coming in Endgame with him, because this is apparently his last film. Swinging into number 6 is Spider-Man Homecoming. Why is this higher than Iron Man? I don't know, probably because I grew up reading Spider-Man comics and watching Spider-Man cartoons and loving the original Sam Raimi trilogy. So this is always my dude, and this is the most comic accurate version of Spider-Man, and this is the best we've seen Spider-Man since Spider-Man 2, in my opinion. I think they just did a great job with this character, and I think I love this one probably way more than I should. But what they did with Michael Keaton and the Vulture and everything about this movie, I dug in theaters, and I still love rewatching it now. It doesn't get old, and yeah, that's why it's so high on this list. I love Spider-Man Homecoming. Number 5 is one of those movies that just everyone has at the top of their list. That's Guardians of the Galaxy. And of course it's at the top of my list because it's just awesome. It's so much fun. It's hilarious. It introduces all these characters that whenever, in retrospect, you think that it's just going to be this horrible idea, like a talking raccoon, a tree that can only say 3 words. It just sounds ridiculous, but I love what they did with these characters. I love how funny each of them were in their own ways, and I love how they kind of hid Drax's humor from us in the original trailers. Like, we didn't know that he was going to be this funny character, but Drax is probably my favorite of the Guardians. I think he's hilarious. And this whole movie is just great. The funniest installment in the MCU so far, and I can't wait for James Gunn to direct the 3rd movie. Coming in at number 4 is The Avengers. The original Avengers. This movie is still a hell of a lot of fun. I still believe this is probably in the top 2 greatest theater experiences of my entire life. This and The Dark Knight are probably the best experiences I've just had at the movie theaters watching a film. It was just so much fun to see all these guys finally team up for the first time. And I had never ever dreamt that anything like that was going to happen growing up. But superheroes being like my favorite type of movie, this is like a dream come true for me, and seeing it was amazing, and nothing is ever going to top that, I don't think. Number 3 is a movie that just gets better and better and better every single time I watch it, and it's Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I don't know what it is about this movie. I just adore it. It took what they introduced in Captain America, the first Avenger, and just elevated it to whole new levels. Like, it was like an entirely new genre. And this is what the first movie that introduced the Russo brothers, the first movie that they directed in this franchise. And I think they are the best directors of this franchise. Each movie they directed have just been better and better as they go along, which is probably a spoiler for the rest of my list if you know what movies the Russo brothers directed, but it all started with this one. You got even better with Captain America: Civil War, which, spoiler alert for number 2. Yes, this movie, actually, it was my favorite for a while. I was gonna put it at number 1. For some reason, Captain America: Civil War is just, it got me. It got me in theaters, and it still gets me when I watch it. It feels like an Avengers movie. It really does. It doesn't feel like a Captain America movie, but they pulled it off. They made this movie something incredible, introducing Spider-Man and Black Panther and taking heroes like Iron Man and Captain America to new levels that we didn't know that they could go to. But my number 1, of course, goes to Avengers: Infinity War. As of now, this is my favorite movie in the MCU. It's the biggest, it's the best, it's the one that, from the logo, from the freaking Marvel logo, I was nervous. Formed on the screen and there was no music, it was just, I was like, fuck, I'm gonna die. I rewatch it all the time. It's another one of those, I don't think it's ever going to get old. It's timeless, and it got me super, super pumped for Endgame because the Russo brothers are directing it, and this is the actual finale, like the big finale, the 3-hour long one, and I don't know if I'm ready for it, but I'm super stoked, and it's mainly due to this movie and Captain America: Civil War just working together to get me super pumped for, as of now, my favorite, but it changes. Like, the top 4 intertwine all the time. Like, I could put all 4 of those at number 1 at some times. It depends on what I watched last. And I watched Infinity War before I made this list today, so as of now, that one's my favorite. It's just incredible, and I love going back and rewatching it. But yeah, that's my ranking for the MCU. I'm probably going to redo it after Spider-Man: Far From Home comes out, and I'm also planning on reviewing each one of the Spider-Man movies before Far From Home comes out as well. I'm going to go ahead and just jump to the future. That way I don't have to wait to see Endgame, because the anticipation is killing me.